Welcome to the Zachrilege Cast podcast, YouTube video interview program that features me talking to some of the best and brightest in the atheist / secular / awesome community. This is episode number 78. We're recording live on January 12th, 2017. Thanks go to last week's guests, Rachel and Jean of ReasonCon 2017. It's the place to be, and that's where we're all trying to get. I do hear that tonight's guest is attempting to make it to ReasonCon as well. Beth Hambridge once worked at a Jesus camp, and apparently it worked, as she is now the co-host of the world-famous Beyond the Trailer Park show. Tonight we have a true American redshirt, gay female atheist, and with a pre-existing condition. There once was a little podcast named Atheists on Air, and there was a little trailer park featured in that show, and that's where Beyond the Trailer Park came from. It's kind of like the spin-off superseding the original, as AOA has sadly departed, and Beyond the Trailer Park just celebrated episode number 96. Welcome to the person causing havoc and chaos on a daily basis. Hello, Beth.
Hello, Zach. Nice to finally meet you in person. I've heard lots of good things about you.
We get in the similar circle. So I haven't done this in a while, and I think I need to. So we're going to start the show with a little out-of-context quoting from tonight's guest. She's a good sport, hopefully. So we'll see. These are all quotes from Beyond the Trailer Park. Check it out on iTunes and YouTube and all that good stuff. The second you shove it in my face, I'm going to shove it back. Gays should be killed. My dick is bigger than yours. My God's dick is bigger than your God's dick. And I think that last one was Deb kind of helping you clear up that quote.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I trip over my words sometimes, so it doesn't sound... Actually, those are both kind of offshoots from the movie G.I. Jane, when in the one scene she says, suck my dick. I always found that kind of comical, so it's just kind of stuck. And yes, I'm dating myself with that movie.
I think that was 90, so it's not too bad. I mean, it's I missed out on that. I didn't get it on VHS.
I thought it was earlier.
It's possible. Yeah. Moore playing a Marine. What a crazy movie! It's totally out there. Women in the military. What will they think of next? So, do you mind giving kind of a personal / religious background?
Well, in a nutshell, to keep it short, so I'm not babbling for hours, I was raised Missouri Synod Lutheran. I converted to the charismatic Pentecostal movement in college, the speaking in tongues, the whole 9 yards, and eventually, probably about late 20s, I started down the path of agnosticism, which eventually led to atheism. As you mentioned, I worked in a Jesus-type camp. I didn't work at the actual Jesus camp. And the one I was affiliated was from the Baptist bent, which does not accept the 1 Corinthians 13 whole speaking in tongues and spiritual gifts idea. So that caused a lot of confusion for me at the time, because being raised Lutheran, we were considered kind of liberal by others, and I thought the doctrinal differences were... I went to a Wesleyan Methodist college, and I just felt like where my church accepted social drinking, they didn't have an issue with playing cards or dancing. My first day of school, we had to, when I was in college, had to sign a pledge stating that we wouldn't smoke, drink, dance, play cards. We could play Uno, something without face cards. None of that. We couldn't couldn't even have, my freshman year, couldn't even have our own stereos, because they didn't want us tuning in secular music. It had to be the school's radio station or nothing. So it wasn't until I think halfway through my sophomore year we were allowed to bring our own stereos to school. It was not Bob Jones like. they're really strict, or Brown University. But it was pretty, in my perspective, it was pretty strict. So I eventually, when I converted to Pentecostalism and the whole speaking in tongues, they didn't agree with any of that. And I was like, but it's all in the Bible. And that started me down. I think for one of my philosophy classes, I had to read Age of Reason by Thomas Paine. And I always thought that a really odd choice at a Christian college. But it was required, so I read it, and the rest is history. Although it took me 10 years, which Deb and I joke about on the show a lot. My deconversion, so to speak, was all pre-internet. And it took me a good 10 years to realize that I was an atheist. Even just to admit it to myself. And it really wasn't until 2000-ish that I started saying to other people, well, I don't believe that way. It was another couple years before I said, listen, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in that shit. So it was a long journey. It was, pre-Dawkins, as I said, pre-internet. He's written his book, God Delusion, back in 1988-ish. I probably would have flipped sides right then and there. But it wasn't until, late 90s, actually it wasn't until like 2006 he wrote that book, so he was 20 years too late. But that's a nutshell version.
But were you able to speak in tongues, and can you still conjure up that gift?
Allegedly, I was considered a interpreter. So the gobbledygook that you spoke, I was able to interpret that. I have no fucking clue what I was interpreting. I probably could call it up if I had to, but no, it's not. So I didn't actually speak in tongues. Supposedly I had the gift of discernment and interpretation. And what I find interesting is during this time period, I was an undiagnosed bipolar with bipolar type 1. I have bipolar disorder. I have what's called bipolar type 1 with psychotic features, which basically means if I get too manic, I think I can fly, and I try to test that theory. So delusions and delusions of grandeur are not unusual for me. So this whole metaphysical bullshit of speaking in tongues and spiritual gifts falls right in line with that type of delusion. So my guess, and this is hindsight, and there's nothing to really support it, is that the religious beliefs supported my bipolar, and my bipolar supported the religious beliefs, but I didn't know that was happening because I didn't know I was bipolar at the time. It wasn't until I dumped religion in 97, 98-ish completely that I actually started to get better control over my illness. Granted, yes, meds did play a part, but I remember the day that I said, I don't believe in God, it was like a humongous weight was lifted off my shoulders from a emotional and mental standpoint. I didn't have to try to prove to others that I was a good person, that I had this curse of original sin hanging over my shoulder, because that's everything I did up till that point was trying to be somebody I was not. In the Christian circles I ran in, mental illness was not real. It was a spiritual issue. Well, I could have prayed till I was blue in the face. It would not done me a damn good of good. They were very frustrated by the fact that I was a cutter. I still am, although I have not done it in 9 years. They saw that as being demonic, and I have mentioned before that I have gone through an exorcism. and survived. Very fucked up for a long time, but at the time, Barb Larson was very popular. He was I used to listen to Focus on the Family with James Dobson almost religiously, to the point that I actually threw my then burgeoning album collection, because I could not listen to secular music until I got to college, into a pond. And so everything I did was geared towards becoming a better Christian, and that burden for a young child, or for a adolescent, is just overwhelming. And when you have an undiagnosed and untreated mental illness on top of it, it's no wonders we read about people flipping their lids and killing their families because of a mental illness. And the question always is asked, what came first, religion or mental illness? So, and that's what I had to deal with. And when I dropped that, it was like, it was gone, like almost instantaneous. And I haven't, from a psychological standpoint, a mental standpoint, it's just like, I'm free. And I've just gone with it ever since.
Well, would those religious friends who said you were demonic say, well, see, we told you were, now that you're an atheist?
I have very little people from one friend. And surprisingly enough, her journey has been very similar to mine. She didn't graduate school that all the troubles she had, and her judgment of me being that one thing I should throw in there is, on top of this religious bullshit, I also was dealing with alcoholism and drug addiction. So what fed what, who knows? But she always used to say that I was a miserable bitch. And, and to be honest, if you knew me 30 years ago, you probably wouldn't like me. I was terrible. But now that she's deconverted, and I know some people don't like that word, she's more of an agnostic than she is an atheist. She sees the exact same thing. What's really funny is her doctoral work was in psychiatry. So she's actually a PhD in psychiatry. And she's starting to see the damages that what our school caused. So it's she's the only one I've ever talked to about it. So other people, I have contact with another friend, but we don't talk about that much. So
well, it's good that you've overcome all that, because you've had a lot to overcome for sure. But how did you get hooked up with Deb and get Beyond the Trailer Park started? Well, it was kind of by accident. We had been participants in the AOA chat, which was initially done by goes by Cash Fierstein now. And I had been in radio before, and I had an itch to get back on the air. And just to qualify, my radio prior to that was in the paranormal. Go figure. But I had, I was about ready to give everything up, my blogging, and I just was getting really disheartened by the political scene and all that stuff. And Cash basically kind of rejuvenated me. He gave me a different perspective, and a couple other people in chat as well. And Deb and I just kind of hit it off. And when AOA started to, I'll say, flounder, for lack of a better word, we had discussed, well, why don't we just do, a show just to give everybody a chance to come and hang out. We wanted to keep that chat group together because we had a pretty decent group.
And not saying that any other groups aren't decent, but you know, we all got along, and so we kind of threw together a 2-hour show, and people liked it, and we were like, well, we don't want to step on any toes, and we waited. I think we did took a week off, and then we did another one. Well, through the course of that, on and off again, Deb made some contact with Cash, and then there was some rigmarole with who is going to run the show, and yada yada yada. Deb and I just kept doing it, and next thing you know, we have Beyond the Trailer Park, and there are some behind the scene helpers. Dave Foda was very instrumental in getting us going, but it just really came out of nowhere on accident. But it's something that we both enjoy doing, so we just have kept it going, and it's, you know, turned it into its own little thing. So that's basically how it started.
Yeah, I think Atheists on Air might be one of those shows that people might forget, but the influence that it had, and Cash, I mean, Reason Con, he was behind that, which I kind of forgot until I started, you know, preparing for last week's show, and then remembered that and heard that I think he was maybe going to show up to the last one, but it didn't happen. And he helped influence and get No Religion Required going, and a few other shows, and because of that, that's kind of trickled down to, you know, me getting the show started. So
yeah, and I think that's an important point, because that's something that both Deb and I are very keen on, is trying to support others within the movement, for lack of a better term, is that if you got something to say, don't be afraid to say it. If, like me, I've been blogging since 2000, but I feel I have something to add to the conversation. Now, as I said, my interests are kind of goofy. I don't know too many atheists that are into the Nephilim, but that's a long story. But there are some other issues that I think I can put a personal spin on. I mean, as an example, I had a friend of mine the other day, and this about just totally blew my mind. We've been friends for 6 or 7 years. We've met maybe 5 times in person, but we're primarily Facebook, actually, you know, Facebook friends. But we have met in person. And we were discussing, I think, gay marriage, something around that idea. And she goes, well, I don't know any gay people. And I'm like, wait, what did you just say? Okay, I'm very out, okay? You would have to be, like, totally blind to miss that I am gay, that I am a lesbian. It's like, hello, what fucking planet are you on? She goes, well, I don't know any gay people. And I'm like, have you read my profile lately? And there was like this long pause, and I'm like, are you reading my profile? She goes, you're gay? I'm like, no, duh. I said, and so are 16 of your other friends that we have in common. I'm like, what? It's like, that is the ignorance we are dealing with in a lot of cases, not just on homosexuality, but just in general. I mean, here's a person that I know who's like, and she's like, but you act so normal. Okay, that's in quotes, air quotes, because I'm not normal. I'm like, well, yeah, hello, we're no different than you. The only difference between you and I is who we fuck in bed. And I said, if you get past that, we are identical. We might have different interests. We may have, you know, and that's what I try to tell people. You have to bring those differences to the fore so we can get past them. And I think what Cash did with AOA, and I think what kind of lit a spark in me again, which was a good thing. Plus, I was, as I said, I was coming off a really rough time. It was that, I did have something to say, and I know people were reading it. Granted, they weren't commenting. I probably have one of the least commented on blogs in the blogosphere. I've been doing it for 16 years, and I think I have 22 comments, and most of them are from friends. It's like, but I know people are reading it because I can tell by my stats. But it's like, if you got something to say it. Bring it to the table. There was, I think what really lit the fire under me is Cash had a call-in guest. God, I can't even remember his name now. I want to say Sergio, but I might be wrong. But he was, not only was he gay, he was an atheist, he was black, and living in Texas. And here this guy was just absolutely terrified. And at the time, I was going by the name Sane Spirit, which dealt with the fact that I was getting my sanity back because I had a relapse and ended up in the hospital. And I was going through a lot of questioning, of myself. And here this guy was terrified. I mean, he couldn't be out about anything because of where he lived and his family. He was younger. And it's like, no person should ever have to face that fear. No one should be afraid to walk out their door because they're black or yellow or purple or green or gay or lesbian, straight, bisexual, whatever. That should not even be part of our conversations anymore, especially in 2017. But sadly, they are. And I think that kind of lit a fire where, maybe if I speak up, other people can speak up. And whether I've contributed to that, I don't know. If I do know that, I've had one or two people comment, hey, I'm glad you said that. I had one person comment about my bipolar, and I keep in contact with them while they're going through the system. So to me, even though that might be the only person I affected, it's worth it. But yeah, you got something to say it. And that's why I like the fact that you started your show not long after ours, and our really started to kick it up a bit. Bobby was associated with Cash. Sadly, Cash is not very active in the community anymore, and I find, he has personal reasons as to why. But that happens. Whether I'm doing this 10 years from now, I don't know. I just go with the flow.
Well, I think that's why when it's time to do a podcast, are you thinking about doing a podcast and going, yeah, but there's like 500 other people doing it. And it's like, well, the thing is with podcasts is people start them, people stop them, people listen to them,
yeah.
People don't. And trust me, you can find an audience if you keep going. And it's just fun to talk to people. So that's why I do it. Now, I interviewed Deb way back when, as actually episode 5 of the show was the first interview where I just talked to her, because she's actually, I think she leads the league in appearances. She's been on the show, I think, 4 times. And it's been a while, so we're going to get her back on. So it was a while back. I'm a much older man now. So I'm going to ask you to be the spokesperson for Beyond the Trailer Park and answer some questions, if you're okay with that, so people get a feel for the show who haven't seen it, the few ridiculous idiots who haven't seen it yet or heard it.
Yeah. Well, considering my age, I would not be surprised if people haven't heard of us, because I have over 500 podcasts that I download on a monthly basis. No, I don't listen to them all. I realized I was never going to get through these because I don't have that much time in the day, but so I wouldn't be surprised. But
well,
go ahead.
How would you describe Beyond the Trailer Park for the uninitiated?
Basically, 2 women talking shit. I'll say informed shit. Deb is Canadian, and I'm basically a transplanted U.S. flatlander living in Buttfuck, nowhere. I call it Pennsylvania. I live in a small town in north central PA. So I'm basically very liberal and progressive in my views, and I border on socialism. I'm surrounded by the GOPT. And Deb is fascinated with the ignorance that I deal with on a daily basis. And I'm not saying and I use ignorance in specifically because a lot of the people that I deal with in person is that they're very undereducated. Most people I know have here where I live, and I've been here 16 years, going on 17, are not college graduates. I think I know 2 that have graduated from college. I know of no one other than my doctors, obviously, that has gone on for postgraduate work. So education is not highly valued in this area. And so she kind of marvels at it. I'm borderline Southern, but not as deep South as like Bobby and Ashley. And when Ashley was with us, she added that extra little flavor to the mix. But I think one of our biggest things is that there's in my opinion anyways, there's very few women's voices within the atheist movement. And I'm including those that are agnostic, etc., whatever term you prefer to use. I don't even know what the right term is. To say secular movement just doesn't sound right either, but there's very few voices, and those that are, I find them very detached from reality, at least the reality I live. And I think they have complicated atheism to the point that it should not be a complicated notion. It's basically you believe or you don't. End of story. There's nothing else to it. I mean, too many people look at the atheist movement. Yeah, there's poor and downtrodden in every movement. You know, people like myself. For those, I mean, I'm very low income, but you know, it's frustrating, but I deal with it. But many people have the notion that we are elitists, and that's not true. So there's crossover between issues. Like one of my biggest things to publicize, I guess, is the elimination of the SNAP program, which is the food stamp program. Most people do not realize that things are so bad in this country that over 63% of our military, active military, are on the SNAP program. You know, so that people have this false notion that, you know, oh, we're all high income people and have all this discretionary. It's like, no, there's those of us that are very poor. And I think that's what I want to address. You know, there's gay atheists everywhere. Granted, there's great Christians, which I don't get. Been there, done that. I just haven't figured that one out yet. But, you know, there's black atheists, there's white atheists, there's yellow, there's green. Atheism is no different. It's just a microcosm of society as a whole. And I think a lot of that microcosm gets ignored, you know, especially from a women's point of view, by some of the other voices in the community. And I'm hoping that Deb and I can fill that in. We're just as smart as you. You know, we have just as much to offer as you, but it's just coming from a woman's point of view. And Canadian. Deb does marvel at some of the shit that goes on in this country. She just doesn't get it.
But she does get plenty of snow from what I hear.
Yeah, she actually gets more snow than I do. I mean, I grew up in Buffalo, so I had to live through the blizzard of 77 and 86, but it's like, you wouldn't think 3 hours, because I'm 3 hours from where I grew up. it would make that big a difference in the weather, but it does. I don't get any lake effect snow. I'm far enough inland, and I live in a valley, so we're protected on both sides from the hills, and I call them hills, not mountains. Mountains are what's out in the Rockies. These are hills. Yeah, you know, but it makes a huge difference. So yeah, I kind of laugh because she gets way worse weather than I do.
Well, we just had a big snowstorm here in Atlanta. We had a third of an inch of snow on Saturday. Shut down the city for a whole hour, I'd say. But what you said about
Part of the problem,
not being too many female hosts, it does seem like if there is female hosts, it's usually female males that have 2 female hosts. And every subject you talk about, you have just tons of information. So even though it is a longer show than most, with approximately 2 hours, I think every subject you talk about, you probably could talk about for 10 and not get tired. And that's the truth.
Well, the tired part, a year and a half ago, I would have agreed with you. Now it's kind of like I fade after an hour and a half. I can make it to an hour and a half pretty good, but a lot of times with me, I have certain subjects that I'm very passionate about because they personally affect me. But also as a human being, they affect others. And like I said, with the food stamps for the military, I just find that abhorrent. There is no fucking excuse for that. We are one of the, if not the richest country in the world, with one of the most powerful militaries in the world, and we have active duty service members getting fucking food stamps. What the fuck is wrong with that problem? But that issue carries over beyond just the military into, into everyday life. Right now, for an example, I face the loss of Obamacare, or the ACA. And this is something I will harp on constantly. I will harp on and on beyond the trailer park. Up at least once. And what people have to realize, the ACA is not perfect. It was never intended to be perfect. It was a Republican plan to begin with. And if they look into the history of Obamacare, Obamacare is the compromise. Everybody says, some people say, well, we should go single payer. Well, that's what President Obama wanted. But it didn't happen. In fact, I'm in I'll say debate, for lack of a better word, with a supporter of repealing Obamacare, and I have brought up universal health care 16 times so far. He has not once responded to it. He finally did just before I came on air and said, well, that's such a mess in other countries, I won't even talk about it. Well, I wrote back to him really quickly. I said, well, I have friends in Canada, I have friends in Europe, in Great Britain, I have friends in France, I have friends in Belgium, I have friends in Norway, yada, 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 who love their universal health care. Funny that. Is it perfect? No. What system is? I think he deleted the conversation.
You have more staying power than I do, because I was arguing with a friend about it, and I could only go on for about 5 or 6. Of course, it's on Twitter. You can't really do much there in terms of nuance. But it was like, I know 2 people who their premiums have gone up, so I want Obamacare repealed. And it's like, what about people with pre-existing conditions? And pretty much fuck them.
Well, yeah, and that's what I said. Basically, what that person said to you is
that's what happened.
And to the point of premiums going up. First of all, Obamacare has nothing to do with pricing, per se. Yes, the initial pricing of offering the 3 tiers of premium levels, yes. But if you look before Obamacare, premiums were already going up and had been for 10 years. So premiums going up is not a new issue. Anybody that says it is not studying the history of the industry. Okay? We have CEOs of major corporations that offer health insurance taking home $34 million in bonuses, but yet they're not profitable. Bullshit.
Yeah. It's about
it's
companies
about
over people
money
at this point.
Yeah, and that's the thing. For those that don't know me, I had a stroke a year and a half ago. Actually, I've had 2 strokes. My second one was about 9 months later, and it really set me back. Okay, the second stroke did. But prior to that, I had no insurance. I am, or was, one of the few that fell through a crack that is built into Obamacare. Before Pennsylvania had Medicaid, you could not qualify for Medicaid if you had any income. You were allowed $200 in income per month. Anything over that disqualified you from Medicaid. So for years I didn't qualify because I have always worked. Then I had my stroke. I had my first stroke. I went to the hospital after being poked and prodded by numerous friends that it was not the flu, which is what I thought I had. Stroke never even entered my mind. I was sent home 2.5 hours later because I had no insurance. Being unable to work, I get now qualified to get Medicaid. 9 months later, I had my second stroke. I was admitted to the hospital because I had insurance. Don't tell me otherwise. Nothing changed. I had the identical symptoms. But the first time I wasn't admitted, the second time I was. But nothing had changed. So there's a problem there. And there are some states where they have not expanded Medicaid. So there are people, like me, that don't qualify for Medicaid, but part of it is I didn't qualify for Medicaid, but I did not make enough money to afford a premium. So even with the money they give you back to buy a premium, I still wouldn't be able to afford one, because prior to Obamacare, I couldn't even get insurance because I have a pre-existing condition. And I could get complicated and say it's my back and my knees and yada, 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 but for the simple fact that I'm bipolar. My diabetes disqualifies me from getting, or did disqualify me from getting insurance. And, you could have an allergy, hay fever. The list of disqualifying conditions to make you ineligible for insurance was quite lengthy. If you misspelled your name on the application, they could disqualify you for that. So that's what the ACA fixed. And for anybody to say that somebody like myself basically fuck them, I find that it's atrocious. And you are not a human being. And in my opinion, you should be shot. But, we can't do that in this country, so they can do that in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, but not here.
I feel like you could do it probably in Florida. Isn't there the stand your ground
deal? Yeah, probably Florida. With
I guess other states will cover that.
Yeah, the stupid stand your ground law, which now with the incoming administration is probably going to try to go national.
Yeah. We jumped around a bit. I think the whole ACA discussion was necessary, so I had it scheduled for later, but hey, it needed to. It was going to come up, especially the timing with the whole. I I don't understand this. I mean, why not just, if you're going to be evil and just try to, I mean, they've already, how many times is it, or is it just the House that's voted down Obamacare like 70 times? I know this time it was the Senate.
Well, one thing that people have to realize is the prior votes, the previous votes, were based on the fact that we had control of the Senate, or now I got it backwards. We had control of one house of Congress. Republicans had control of the other.
It was the Senate, yeah.
I get it. Yeah. So the House would vote, they would pass it, the Senate would not. The chance of it beating a veto was slim to none because there were enough Republicans at the time that were kind of wishy-washy on their stance. So with the change in Congress, we have lost the Senate. So in other words, we have a Republican Senate, a Republican House, and a Republican presidency. Now, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you are on. That is a bad scenario, no matter what. Usually, at least since I've been alive, it's always been Republicans control one, Democrats control the other. I know they say that in the beginning of President Obama said a supermajority, yada, 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 for like 3 months. It's like, no, if you look at the numbers, he did not. And you really have to dig into the numbers to understand why, too long to explain. But basically, President Obama never once had a majority in both houses.
Wasn't it a filibuster proof that was like 60 Democrats and then one in Massachusetts? And I know my Republican friends were just so happy when Scott Brown won that election, so they could make filibuster into their toy. And the Democrats passed a law making it a little harder to do. Now I kind of wish they still had it. I don't know. I don't see a lot of fight happening.
The insider trading, so to speak, with these little tweaks that they've tried to do, and this goes for both sides, not just the Republicans, have actually, I think, made a mess of our system. Currently, the people are saying, oh, they can't repeal the ACA without replacing it. Well, yes, they can, and they could actually basically force the insurance industry back to what it was before and just say fuck it. I mean, Republicans have been on record as stating you don't need insurance, you have the ER. What people don't realize with that is people like you and I that pay our bills, okay, I don't pay my bills, I'm too poor to, but that pay their bills are actually paying for the people that can't. So either way, whether it's through Obamacare or whatever we end up with, we're still going to end up paying for other people because you're going to pay for it. My bill, I about had a heart attack, and I've already had 2 of those. My bill for my first day, okay, I was in the ER for 2.5 hours. I had blood work. I had a CAT scan? Yeah, and a CAT scan. Came to over $10,000. I don't even make that in a year. I make about $9,000 a year. Prior to, it was covered once I qualified for Medicaid. I have no way of paying for that. So for me, my one medication, I'm on 6. I don't even make enough to pay for it a month. It costs over $900 a month for one medication.
Yeah.
I make about $600 tops. So yeah, something, whether it's the ACA, whether it's universal has to come about. People can't afford that. You have elderly people choosing whether to eat or to buy their medication. Most of the time, they're cutting their medications in half. That shouldn't be happening. And they don't have a replacement. They've been touting these health savings accounts. Well, unless you're in the top 3 to 5% income-wise, you're not going to have the discretionary income to put into your health savings account. In other words, you get sick one time and have to go to the hospital and only have $4,000 saved. Guess what? Kiss that $4,000 goodbye and kiss your health savings account goodbye. It doesn't solve anything. Basically, you're paying for your own medical. So a catastrophic illness is going to destroy you.
I think like a day in the ICU was like 10 grand, and when
Yes.
I had those health spending accounts when I had insurance through a job, and I think I was able to put something like 3,000 a year in there, and you just use that on medication. I mean, or doctor's visits. It wasn't for anything extra. Like you'd have to save up for one procedure, and you weren't even covering your deductible. So not so much. Now, we talked a lot about insurance, but we can't stop talking about Beyond the Trailer Park because that is the show to listen to. Now, we have to ask this question. Who was your favorite guest? And we know you have one.
I honestly do not. I appreciate all our guests. No, actually, I have loved every guest we have had. I know I'm not going to hit them all, so I apologize to our guests that I don't mention. But I wish I would have had more time, like with Hammett Mita from Friendly Atheists, but that had to be probably one of my worst days as a co-host, because not only was I drooling in the corner because I have a lot of respect for Hammett, but I was just having a bad stroke day. But we've had people like, sadly, Acharya S. Actually, Acharya was a friend of mine. She passed away 2 years ago. We've had her on. I could have spent hours, and I actually have off air, just talking with Acharya about mythicism. We've had Chris Rada on. I can't remember if we had her on, I think once. No, twice. Chris is also a friend of mine, and she's written the books Liars for Jesus concerning David Barton. And she's another one. I could go on for hours with her just talking Barton-esque. And he's a dweeb. He is not a historian by any means. We've had recently we had Matt Kovic on, and he's got a project, I will say, dealing with mysticism, but I'm probably slaughtering that, and please don't kill me, Matt. But he has a project that's really interesting, that if look him up, check it out. We've had Karen Garst on. She's a female writer, a great voice in the community. She's a little bit older than I am. But every guest, I think, really, like Robert Beatty and Deanna Holmes, they happen to know each other too. Beatty is tenacious about Dr. Dino, Kent Hovind, and his, we know him for Dr. Dino, but he's very sovereign citizen. And basically there are people that believe, the simplistic definition is, they don't believe in the laws. Basically, they can do whatever they want. The laws are unconstitutional, which I find quite funny because they're saying they're unconstitutional. So if you don't believe in them, then yeah. But Hovind went to jail for 9 years for tax issues. And he's now doing, free Kent Hovind. He's trying to get all his convictions overturned, yada, yada. Yes, it's Eric Hovind's dad. But Robert Beatty has been very tenacious in his tracking of Hovind's whereabouts. My interest with him lies with the sovereign citizen aspect, and recently he's hooked up with Mary Toko, who is a rabid anti-vaxxer. I've had run-ins with her online. So we now have a religious Fruit Loop married to a anti-vax Fruit Loop, and it's a disaster because they're trying to kill you by telling you to eat B17, which is Laetrile, also known as amygdalin or cyanide. So take your pick.
Sounds bad.
But then again, Eric Hovind has also touted this B17 bullshit too. So I don't know who got it from whom, but we've had Deanna Holmes was on not too long ago concerning Mark Driscoll. And for those unaware, Mark Driscoll was a megachurch pastor of Mars Hill in, I want to say Washington State.
Seattle.
Seattle. He's now moved to Arizona, literally in Deanna's backyard. She's also a neighbor to my favorite target, Kevin L. Anderson of Kill the Fags. Well, Kill the Homos, excuse me. Kill the Fags is Westboro. So
it's easy to get them mixed up, huh?
Yeah, well, what's sad about I was so excited when Phelps died, Phelps the daddy, because I was like, oh, maybe I can get rid of the files. I have, they're in storage now, about 5 file boxes of paper files, because back when I started, computers didn't exist in the form they are today. And I was like, oh, I can get rid of this stuff. And well, thanks, Stephen. Fucktard. But both Deanna and Robert are Christians. So our support in specific endeavors comes from all sides. We've had Peter Griffith and Robert Robertson, who is a personal friend of mine, on talking about Scientology, which besides Mormonism, I believe is one of our highest downloaded shows. Deb has a very keen interest in Scientology, even more so than I. She's really delved into it. Kind of hard to delve into anything when you have an attention span of a gnat. But she was able to get Peter Griffin, who is an activist over in Ireland, I believe. And so we've had them on. We've had Bryce Blankenagel on talking about Mormonism. We've had David Michaels on. I mean, we've had so many guests. It's just, it's astounding. And I don't know how many books I'll say had to read. I read anyways. I'm a voracious reader. I go through about 5 books a week. But it's like every one of them, besides Deanna and Robert, the only thing we have in common is our unbelief. But yet, I mean, there's other commonalities, but that's the only thing that holds us together, and that unbelief has led to, you know, each one of us picking something that we're passionate about and going with it. You know, and well, I'll use Matt Kovac as an example. I mean, he's attacking mythicism from a little bit different angle, but I mean, people would say, well, there's Carrier and there, you know, Acharya, and some people blow Acharya off, and for whatever reasons, I'm not judging either way. I mean, as I said, Acharya was a personal friend of mine, so of course I'm going to be biased. But you have different angles, and I think that's what makes it unique. You look at, I'm going to pick on Christianity because we're here in the U.S. It's one view and one view only. No questions asked. God did it. That's what it boils down to. We don't have that in the atheist community. We don't have, well, Dawkins said, you don't hear people saying that. Dennett said, you know, yeah, Dennett may have said that, but Joe Blow down the street doesn't agree with him. Oh, you know, you're allowed to dissent in the atheist community within Christianity, and depending on what sect of Christianity you are, there is no dissent. It is God did it, period.
There's the pull quote from this episode. God did it, period. End of story. That's the one.
Yeah.
So,
Well, go ahead.
we have, our own scary issues that we've talked about in the U.S. with Donald Trump. But did you and Deb enjoy scaring the shit out of everybody by talking about what's going on in Pakistan in this week's episode?
Actually, I would have liked to scare y'all a little bit more. I have something written out. Excuse me 1 second. What's going on in Pakistan is at our front door. Not to make light of the situation over there, but people that tell me that dominionism does not exist, or, oh, my church doesn't believe that way. Well, it's happening. Granted, not to the extent. There's a saying that says that tyranny is going to come wrapped up. What's the saying? Wrapped in a flag carrying a Bible. That's what's going on right now in this country. But I'm an isolationist. I really don't think the U.S. as a whole should be meddling in other countries' affairs. But I have to temper that with reality. And that is, people being kidnapped and killed for thought crimes. It's like, seriously? What fucking century are we in? I'm a blogger. I've been blogging for 16 years. It terrifies me to think that one day Donald Trump has a little snit fit, or somebody in his administration, it doesn't have to be him, doesn't like what I write and comes and arrests me. Although I might welcome it, I'd get 3 squares out of the deal if they didn't execute me. Now, we're not to that extreme, but I do think about it. If I lived in Bangladesh, or if I lived in Pakistan, or Saudi Arabia, I would face that. That shouldn't be happening. Religion should not have that much power. Now, there are other social-political issues with the Pakistan issue. It's not strictly a religious issue, but you have to remember that Islam is not just a religion, it is also a political ideology. It is more embedded in their culture than Christianity is in ours. And that is a theocracy. When your culture, when your political ideology becomes your religion and vice versa, that is a theocracy. And that is what we are heading for. Now, Donald Trump is not a theocrat. Okay, just to make that clear. Many on his administration are. Names that come off the top of my head, education person DeVos. She is a big-time theocrat. Jeff Sessions, who is going through confirmation hearings for our Attorney General, is a theocrat who does not believe in the separation of church-state. He finds the concept unconstitutional. Gee, funny, it's in our Constitution. Mike Pence, just look at Indiana. I mean, he is a big-time theocrat. Those are the people that scare me. Trump is wishy-washy. He's going to go wherever he can make a quick buck. And if people think he's going to divest his interests in his businesses while he's president, yeah, stick to where the sun don't shine. He has no intentions of giving control of his industries to his sons. And someone please explain to me why adult children, I'm talking like, I don't know, what, they're in their 30s minimum, why are they having free access in Washington the way they are? young children such as Malia and Sasha, yeah, I can understand. They have to live with mommy and daddy. Do these kids live with Donald? Do these adult children who I know Ivanka is married, do they live with Donald that they have to be up his ass every 5 seconds? I don't get that. I mean, these are unvetted individuals that have free reign right now, and more so after inauguration, free reign in Washington. Ivanka's already sat in on, we'll say delicate, I don't think they were secretive, negotiations, or we'll say introductions. He can't really negotiate anything with Japan. Why was she there? What role does she have? She's a fucking daughter of Donald Trump. That's it. But it's that attitude where people are like, oh, it's just Donald. Well, that type of attitude is what's led to, you know, situations that have happened in Pakistan and happened in Bangladesh. If we want to ignore that, and this is where I say my reality collides with my utopia, we can't ignore shit like that. Because the next person, it's like Deb said with the Martin Niemöller poem, you know, first they came for the socialists, but I'm not a socialist, so I didn't speak up. Next they came for the trade unionists. I'm not a trade unionist. You know, I did not speak up. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. That's what we're heading into. So while I physically cannot do diddly shit about what's going on in Pakistan, we literally were going on the seat of our pants on Monday night as information was coming into our contacts. I mean, we were literally, in some instances, relating what they were telling us at the moment. And that's what I think we need to do with not just the issues in Pakistan, but all issues. But what makes what's going on in Pakistan so important is because, and I don't know if Deb and I had anything to do with this. I would much rather give the credit to Faisal and to Ali Rizvi and Alishba and all them, is that because of the minimal coverage it did get from, we'll say, us rookies, some of the major networks did pick it up. And that's the thing. People need to know this shit's going on in order to do anything about it. I mean, in our country, we've all seen the whole Black Lives Matter bullshit. The shootings of allegedly unarmed young black men by police. I have no, commentary as far as whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but we would not know about that if we lived in another country. And now that we do know, it was getting swept under the rug. People were just kind of poo-pooing. People started to take notice. That's the type of thing we need to do with issues that are important to whether it's you personally or the movement as a whole. And Pakistan highlights that. Bangladesh highlights that. Most people don't know that I believe there was one more killing. That's still going on. But, well, like I said on the show Monday night, people don't realize nobody's been prosecuted for the crimes. It's been over a year. And nobody's been prosecuted. Raif Badawi is another example. He's going on 2 years of sitting in a Saudi prison. Raif Badawi's situation actually scares me more than I think, what's going on in Bangladesh and Pakistan. Because people know about him. He's got his wife and family and friends. And now, from what I understand, the Canadian government is actively pursuing, trying to get him released, and nothing's happening. I find it scary. And, if we're not careful, that type of shit's going to come to this country. And we're just going to be like, oh. And before you know, it's going to be too late. Nothing we can do.
Yeah, with all the stuff happening in the world and just how there's so much information, I'm impressed by the connections that you and Deb have, including Deb's harem of young Islamic men who keep kind of pursuing her, which is great. Kind of talks about how they are trying to talk her into Islam and then to, like, you know, falling in love with them, which is great. But how is your health now, and how do you kind of self-care in a way with all the stuff you deal with and write about and talk about, because you're dealing with some of the toughest stuff going on right now?
Overall, I feel good. I still have some physical limitations. Regretfully, the stroke basically took the right side of my body. I have what's called hemiparesis, which is weakness on one side of the body. In my case, it's my right, which is my dominant side. The only good thing about that is that the issues I have, like with my foot, my knee, I played hockey for 26 years. I beat the fuck out of my body when I was a kid. I used to think jumping off of garage roofs for fun was the thing to do. So I was not very kind to my body, and I am paying for it now. But a lot of the issues I have are on the right side of my body, so some of it I don't even feel. Regretfully, I do feel my foot. But overall, I feel good. My numbers are where they should be. What we think happened is that I had a blood clot in my leg and it broke loose. And when I look back at it in hindsight, there were probably signs that I missed. I was having a lot of issues with my leg before my first stroke, and I have not had issues with it since. In fact, even my knee, I have not had the pain. So it was probably an issue that was building. Now, the chances of them finding the clot might have been small because we passed it off as my arthritis. I don't know, whether it would have made a difference, but it highlights the fact that small issues became very large. I was an unmedicated diabetic. I couldn't afford my medication at the time because I had no insurance. Between my diabetes getting out of control, I had the blood clot, which we didn't know about. That's what what we think caused my first stroke. But hindsight, we don't know. But that's why it's important to have insurance, and why the issue with the poor, dealing with the poor, with food stamps, with the insurance and all that entails is so important to me because I'm living it. Okay? Yes, I wish I made a shitload of money, but when I decided to leave my other job, which paid a little bit more, I did so with, understanding that money would be tight, but I did not do so thinking I'd lose my insurance completely. So yeah, some of the decisions I made were probably not the smartest, but for years I have lived life for other people, and I finally decided that I was going to live life for myself and do things I enjoy. So if I want to sit at my computer for 20 hours a day on my day off, that's what I'm going to do. Playing some, but health-wise, I feel good. Slowly but surely, as I said, physical, there's some things I can't do. I mean, my hand is pretty much useless. It makes cooking a challenge. I'm a chef by training, so it's very frustrating. I've had to find workarounds. Some of them work, some of them don't, but, I mean, I've said this before on Beyond the Trailer Park. If it was not for the fact of my initial GoFundMe that was started, I probably would be in a really rough spot right now because I would not have a home. For 3 months, people donated to my cause, which allowed me, one, to take the time to heal, and two, it paid my rent for the 3.5 months I was unable to work. I mean, my landlord, who happens to be also a friend of mine, was surprised that I was able to maintain my rent while I was sick. I think it kind of blew him away. But, I thank everybody for that. I mean, I'm in debt to you guys. I mean, I have no way of repaying that. I have what can I do? I can give you a shout out on Beyond the Trailer Park, but that's about it. Unless I write a book or something, then I can give you a free copy. But yeah, with an attention span of a gnat, that's not happening. But health-wise, I'm doing good.
Well, we have gone more than an hour and 10 minutes, actually. We've been rolling. Beth knows how to talk, and Deb occasionally gets to talk on Beyond the Trailer Park. Trust me, it does happen. But since we did skip a few questions, we were unable to ask. This is the point where you can either, anything that we didn't cover you want to talk about, and then, of course, this is the Pimp Thyself section, so tell everybody about where they can find you, Beyond the Trailer Park, your various blogs, and anything else you have going on right now.
Okay. Well, the only thing I would say, I know we hit on a few things, but if you really want, I hate using this phrase, and if you understand my my vaccination stance, you'll understand why. Do your research. If you're not sure, look it up. And don't just look at the Democratic side. Don't just look at Bernie Sanders' side. Look at it from both sides of the issue. Inform yourself of why it's such a big deal that they want to repeal Obamacare. I mean, as I said, most people don't realize, like, they use the talking point about increasing premiums. Premiums have been going up for 20 years. That's not changed. So look behind the talking points. And, don't be afraid to call your legislator and say, hey. But as I said, as much as I hate this phrase, don't be afraid to look for further information on something you don't understand. I mean, my blog, which right now is on hiatus, is Havoc and Chaos. It's on Blogger. When I give my Twitter, it's all connected to that. But I try to write on some of these issues. As I said, I've put it on hiatus, so it's a little dated right now. Hopefully sometime in the next month or so I'll get back to writing. But I started a second blog when I got my stroke because of some of the wonderful medical woo that I have received in my email. Like, stop your medications. You don't need that. Take some cinnamon. That'll fix you. No. I'm sorry. I'll stick with my statins. Thank you. And my high blood pressure medication. I really don't want to stroke out. But it's called iScience Do You. And basically it's just, I get a lot of medical woo sent to me because of my illness. And I'm in a lot of different science groups, and the anti-vaccination has been one of the things. So it's just basically when I get something sciencey and it piques my interest, I will look into it. And I am a research nerd. I like delving into stuff. And basically, I'm just taking you through the process I went through. Currently, I'm working on one where I got into a discussion with a creationist. I'm not a debater. I hate doing it, but it has to be done. And so I'm just laying out the process I went through, some of the studies that I've used, and just to give you guys, ammunition that you may not get somewhere else. Or, I like to write. I have things to say. I have a big mouth. That's what it comes down to. But I hit anti-vaccination, creation, evolution, just a bunch of different stuff. Black Sav. My biggie is, which is numerical solution, curing autism. That's Carrie Rivera and Jim Humble. I speak about that a lot, but it's just something to do. I'm not a social butterfly, so doing my blogs gives me something to do. But as far as finding me, easiest way is on Twitter. I go by Dune9998. Yes, it is a reference to the novel Dune by Frank Herbert. I like the name. I started using it back before, quote, internet. I was on the bulletin boards at the time, and it just kind of stuck. The 998 is part of my social security number. I figured I'd actually remember that, and it just kind of fits me. But that connects to Facebook, which is Beth A. Hambridge. Use the A. If there's any means of telling me it is from Beyond the Trailer Park, please do so, or I will delete you. My page is public, so anything you publish on my page will not be deleted unless it's, like, nasty. I don't like nasty shit. And just fair warning, anything you publish on my page may become a blog post. So if you send me a rude message, I will make a blog post out of it. I did that not too long ago. And as I said, they both connect to Havoc and Chaos and iScience to you. And then you guys can find me every Monday night, usually, at 9:30 p.m. on YouTube, doing Beyond the Trailer Park with Deb McTaggart, also known as Heretic Woman. And that's me, in a nutshell.
Perfect. Well, that's awesome. Now, if you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/Zachrilege, Zachrilege. And I should be able to say it. Usually I've had a couple beers. Tonight I'm having water because it's so late. It's past my bedtime. I just can't do it so late anymore. Getting up there. But you can follow me on Twitter at Zachrilege, like the Zachrilege Cast page on Facebook, and send all hate mail to zachrilege.cast@gmail.com. Thank you, Beth, for being on tonight and for illuminating us. You got so much to say. We could probably do 3 or 4 more, and the surface would be scratched. Consider the surface scratched. That's what I gotta say.
Yeah.
So for listeners out there, stay safe, and if you need to chat, I'm available. If you're an atheist and you feel alone, you're not alone. Reach out. Let's chat and get that human connectedness that keeps us coming back every Sunday. Stay skeptical. I love all y'all, and good night.